At 5:06 in the afternoon, a giant passenger plane began to move faster through the fog. Its engines grew louder. Its wheels rolled down the runway. The pilots believed they were free to take off, but another giant plane was still on that same runway. The control tower could not see either aircraft. The crews could not see each other. And several short radio messages had left 3 groups of people with 3 different ideas about what was happening. In less than 15 seconds, there would be no time left to correct the mistake. This is the story of the Tenerife airport disaster, a chain of pressure, fog, blocked radio calls, and unclear words that changed aviation forever. Listen for 3 useful phrases as the story develops. Stand by, speak up, and leave no room for doubt. March 27th, 1997 began as an ordinary Sunday for hundreds of travelers flying to the Canary Islands. 2 Boeing 747 passenger planes were heading for Gran Canaria. One belonged to KLM, the Dutch airline. The other belonged to Pan American, usually called Pan Am. Both aircraft were huge. At that time, the 747 was one of the most impressive machines in the sky. It could carry hundreds of people across an ocean. But neither plane reached its planned airport on time. That afternoon, a bomb exploded inside the terminal at Gran Canaria. The airport closed for safety reasons, and incoming flights were sent to other islands. The KLM and Pan Am planes were both diverted to Los Rodeos Airport on Tenerife. Los Rodeos was much smaller than Gran Canaria. It had one main runway and a parallel taxiway. Normally, planes could use the taxiway to move beside the runway. But now so many diverted aircraft were parked there that the taxiway became blocked. The airport was crowded. Crews waited. Passengers waited. No one knew exactly when Gran Canaria would reopen. Then the KLM captain made a practical decision. While they were on the ground, his plane would take on extra fuel. That way, after reaching Gran Canaria, the crew could quickly begin the return flight to Amsterdam. The refueling took time. It also meant that the KLM plane stood in front of the Pan Am plane. The Pan Am crew wanted to leave as soon as Gran Canaria reopened, but they could not move. Around the KLM aircraft, by the time the fuel was loaded, the delay had become longer, the airport had become busier, and the weather had begun to change. Los Rodeos sits high above the sea. Clouds can move across the airport very quickly. That afternoon, low clouds began to cover the runway. One moment, a pilot could see a large part of the airport. A few minutes later, the view could disappear behind thick white fog. Gran Canaria finally reopened. Everyone wanted to leave Tenerife. Because the taxiway was blocked, the tower gave both 747s an unusual instruction. They had to taxi on the runway itself. The KLM plane would go first. It would travel to the far end, turn around, and wait in the takeoff position. The Pan Am plane would follow behind it, then leave the runway through one of the side exits. This already required careful communication. The planes were moving in the same direction on the same runway. The Pan Am crew had to find the correct exit in poor visibility. The KLM crew had to wait until the runway was completely clear. The tower could guide them by radio, but it had no ground radar. The controllers could not see the aircraft through the fog. Everyone now depended on words. The Pan Am pilots slowly searched for their exit. The turn was difficult to identify, and the instructions were not completely easy to follow. They passed one exit and continued along the runway. Ahead of them, the KLM plane reached the end and turned around. It now faced back toward the Pan Am aircraft, but the 2 crews still could not see each other. In aviation, permission to follow a route is not the same as permission to take off. A route clearance tells a crew where to fly after leaving the ground. A takeoff clearance tells them that the runway is clear and they may begin the takeoff. The KLM crew asked for its route clearance. The tower gave it. As the first officer repeated the route, the captain increased the engine power and began to move. The first officer then used a sentence that included the word takeoff. His meaning was not fully clear. Was he saying that they were now taking off or that they were ready for takeoff? The controller answered with, "Okay," then added that the KLM plane should stand by. To stand by means to wait and be ready for the next instruction? But at almost exactly the same moment, the Pan Am crew transmitted another message. They said they were still taxiing on the runway. The two radio calls happened together. On the KLM radio, they became a loud electronic sound. Part of the controller's warning was blocked. The KLM crew did not hear the full message telling them to wait. The captain continued to accelerate. Inside the KLM cockpit, the flight engineer was not certain that the Pan Am plane had left the runway. He asked about it. The captain answered that it had. This was one of the final chances to stop. The engineer had noticed a danger, but his question did not change the captain's decision. In a modern safety culture, crew members are trained to speak up when something does not feel right. To speak up means to say a concern clearly, even when the other person is more senior or more experienced. The KLM captain was one of the airline's most respected pilots. The others may have found it difficult to challenge him strongly. Investigators later saw this as one part of a much larger chain, not as the only cause. The KLM 747 was now moving fast. The Pan Am crew was still looking for the runway exit. Then, through the fog, they saw lights coming toward them. At first, the lights may have looked still. Then they grew larger. The Pan Am pilots understood what was happening. They pushed their engines forward and tried to turn off the runway. The KLM captain saw the Pan Am plane and pulled his aircraft into the air. The tail hit the runway as he tried to climb more quickly. The KLM plane left the ground, but it was too late. It struck the Pan Am aircraft and crashed farther down the runway. Everyone on the KLM plane died. 61 people escaped from the Pan Am plane. In total, 583 people lost their lives. It remains the deadliest accident in aviation history. The tragedy was not caused by one strange sentence alone. Many conditions came together: the bomb at another airport, the sudden crowd of aircraft, the blocked taxiway, the extra fuel, the pressure to leave, the fast-moving fog, the lack of ground radar, the difficult runway exit, 2 radio calls at the same time, and decisions inside the cockpit. Remove one link, and the result might have been different. Investigators studied the radio messages closely. In daily life, people often accept language that is not exact. We say, "Okay, I think so," or "probably." The other person uses the situation to understand us. On a runway in thick fog, that is not enough. Aviation organizations strengthened the use of standard radio language. Important messages had to be short, exact, and easy to confirm. The word takeoff became more carefully protected. It should be used for the actual takeoff clearance or when a clearance is canceled. At other times, crews normally say they are ready for departure. Controllers and pilots also became more careful about repeating instructions. A pilot reads back a critical clearance. The controller listens to check that it was understood correctly. The goal is to leave no room for doubt. This phrase means to make something so clear that it cannot reasonably be understood in another way. Cockpit culture changed too. Airlines developed stronger crew resource management training. A captain still leads the aircraft, but safety depends on the whole crew. A junior crew member must be able to question a decision. A captain must be ready to listen. Technology improved as well. Ground radar and later surface warning systems helped controllers track aircraft when human eyes could not. None of these changes can remove every danger, but together they create several chances to catch a mistake before it becomes a disaster. The Tenerife disaster is often described as a story about language. That is true, but incomplete. Clear words matter most when a system is already under pressure. The people at Los Rodeos were not trying to take risks. They were trying to solve problems, move crowded aircraft, follow changing plans, find an exit in fog, and get passengers to their destination. Yet pressure made assumptions feel like facts. The tower believed the KLM plane was waiting. The KLM captain believed the runway was clear. The Pan Am crew believed that other aircraft would not move without permission. All three beliefs could not be true at the same time. That is why safety language does more than share information. It forces people to confirm that they are living in the same version of events. Sometimes one clear sentence can stop an entire chain. Here are the 3 phrases from the story. Stand by. It means wait and be ready for the next instruction. Example. The manager is checking the figures, so please stand by. Speak up. It means express an idea or concern clearly, especially when staying silent could cause a problem. Example. If the plan seems unsafe, speak up before the work begins. Leave no room for doubt. It means communicate so clearly that people cannot reasonably misunderstand you. Example. The final email left no room for doubt about the deadline. Now tell the story back in your own words. Use this simple structure. On March 27, 1977, 2 Boeing 747s were diverted to a small airport on Tenerife. The airport became crowded, and thick fog covered the runway. Because the taxiway was blocked, both planes had to move along the same runway. The KLM crew received a route clearance, but not a clear takeoff clearance. Radio messages overlapped, an important warning was partly blocked, and the captain believed the runway was clear. The KLM plane began its takeoff while the Pan Am plane was still ahead. The collision killed 583 people. After the disaster, aviation strengthened standard radio language, readbacks, and teamwork inside the cockpit. The lesson is simple. When the risk is high, words must leave no room for doubt. Pause now and tell the story once without reading.